Hi everyone, my name is Claudie, and this video is going to be a part of the CESC series. CES stands for Claudie's Emotional Spectrum Chart, and that's a tool I created to help explain why I believe our thoughts and emotions are the beating hearts to every reality. Stay tuned because this video is going to be about emotional energy and going to be describing the three main types of emotional energy on Claudie's Emotional Spectrum Chart. The three main types of emotional energy are positive, negative, and balanced. But today we're also going to be talking about forces, movers, probable forces, polar gravitational emotional energy, MOAH, perceptive lens, and environmental and social perceptive lens. Just a reminder, these are all thoughts and ideas that I developed over my lifetime and have evolved over my lifetime. I love history, and that helped shape this perspective as well. So these are all ideas that I formulated with the knowledge and experiences that I have absorbed. Through my experiences and through the experiences of those before me, I realized there were both similarities and differences in people's perspectives. I noticed that the similarities were formed more internally and the differences were formed externally. But with all that information, I realized that it was a complex topic to talk about. So I created this chart to explain how I see or how I believe emotional energy works. Because with all the different aspects to an individual internally and externally, I realized that the connection between the two were and still are emotions. So first things first, what is emotional energy?
An emotional feeling that within a being is triggered by their senses and perception that can manifest as balanced, positive, or negative emotional forces, movers, and probable forces on Claudie's emotional spectrum chart, having either positive or negative polar gravitational emotional energy and having either positive or negative impact on perspective and thus one's reality.
Positive emotional energy is represented by the top half of the chart, and the bottom half is representing the negative emotional energy. And though these energies interact with one another, this chart is showing how I believe positive thoughts and emotions shape our lives. In the definition, I use the word forces. Forces are defined as labeled number 1 on the bottom of each force section on Claudie's emotional spectrum chart. This is the intentional or unintentional position on Claudie's emotional spectrum chart in one of the 3 force categories. This includes the body senses in the emotional category, Maslow's hierarchy of needs in the physical category, and factual knowledge and non-factual knowledge in the intellectual category. Forces are things that are known in general to the individual and what is known by the majority when it comes to a body of people. A force's emotional energy can be positive, negative, or balanced. I also use the word movers, and they are
labeled number 4 on the bottom of each mover section of Claudie's emotional spectrum chart. They are the active aspects that can be applied by a person or body of people to either ascend or descend on Claudie's emotional spectrum chart. In the emotional category, the positive emotional energy is increasing tenacity. And the negative emotional energy is decreasing tenacity. In the physical category, the positive emotional energy is opportunity, and the negative emotional energy is lack of opportunity. And in the intellectual perception category, the positive emotional energy is curiosity, and the negative emotional energy is lack of curiosity. This will either form an autonomous or evolving person or body of people, or form a dependent and regressing person or body of people. This also helps generate the positive and or negative polar gravitational emotional energy. Labeled number 6 on the bottom of each probable force section of Claudie's emotional spectrum chart is the increased probability of an outcome that corresponds with the emotions and perspective along with the forces and movers of that category and or the forces and movers of other areas on Claudie's emotional spectrum chart. In the physical category, they are the positive emotional energy of increasing probability for success,
and the negative emotional energy for decreasing probability for success, both of which are reflective in the reality category. The emotional perception category's probable force is perspective, which are the MOAH ranges from the positive energy of autonomy and the negative energy of dependency. In the intellectual category, the probable force is the positive emotional energy of being least vulnerable to manipulation and the negative emotional energy of being most vulnerable to manipulation, both of which are reflective in a regressing or evolving person or body of people. This is generated by positive or negative polar gravitational emotional energy. The last term that I used in the emotional energy definition was polar gravitational emotional energy, the duality or friction of positive and negative emotional energy within and around a person and or a body of people that results in a push towards either positive ascending or negative descending outcome. This outcome results as a MOAH ranging from 1 to 7, probable force and or emotional range. What determines if polar gravitational emotional energy is positive or negative is a person or body of people's choice. The duality or friction of positive and negative emotional energy is stimulated by internal and external emotions, thoughts, behaviors, and reality. This is also how perspective continues to form. So now that you have a general idea of what emotional energy is, I'm going to go through positive emotional energy in more detail. Positive emotional energy stimulates and generates a euphoric energy onto perspective by triggering the being senses that results in having a higher probability to manifest as the positive emotional forces, movers, and probable forces on Claudi's emotional spectrum chart. This energy as a whole promotes autonomy in an individual, society, and/or civilization. And for a better understanding of negative emotional energy, let's go over the definition. Negative emotional energy stimulates and generates an alertive emotional energy onto perspective. By triggering the being senses, results in having a higher probability to manifest as negative emotional forces, movers, and probable forces in Claudi's emotional spectrum chart. This energy promotes dependency, domination, and regression of a person or body of people, having a negative polar gravitational emotional energy and having a negative impact on perspective and thus one's reality. Now I know alertive isn't a word, but I felt it best described the type of emotional energy I'm trying to explain. And so with that, alertive energy, the heightened sense of alertness towards the basic needs for continuous life, seen in the physical category at the very bottom of the probability for success section, which is due to some sort of imbalance found in the physiological subsection of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Now, as I said before, the balanced energy is represented in the middle of the chart. In the emotional perception category, representing I am for the internal stimuli and what is for external stimuli. In the physical perception category, it is represented by behavior itself. In the intellectual perception category, it's represented by thought manifesting as what could be. In the perspective category, this is represented by the quantifying unit of perspective, which is MOAH. And in the reality category, this is represented by the reality, manifesting as what is. Here's how the flow of energy can be visualized, with this ball of color reflecting one another, but still having all the colors just interacting with one another. Now, because nothing stays still, you can visualize it as this bubble, all those colors as well, with all the colors meshing together. Now, you may be wondering, what is MOAH? MOAH is a term I first heard used by a comedian named Dave Chappelle, which I'm sure everybody knows, and in his joke, it was coined miles on a hoe, but for CESC purposes, we are going to call it miles on a human. And I have the definition here. MOAH is a quantifying unit of perspective. It encompasses a person or a body of people's feelings, choices, and general range of tenacity, the current opportunities that are and aren't available to them, and the actions they took towards them. Their current cognitive ability to communicate and interpret functional and applicable information, their perspective on their reality towards a specific topic, and their type of perceptive lens in comparison to their environmental and social perceptive lens. MOAH includes the relationship dynamic they have with their personal and societal environment. MOAH can be positive, negative, or balanced. Now you could be wondering, why would you leave it as miles on a hoe? Well, with all this, it can get really serious, and I think that with serious work or with any work, a bit of comic relief is always nice, and I love to laugh, so I left it in there because it's funny to me. And as we all know, laughter is the best medicine, so why not? So in the MOAH definition, I use the term environmental and social perceptive lens. What does that mean? Well, here's the definition. The primary methods in which a group, society, and/or civilization allocated or allocates their knowledge. This would be an emotional perceptive lens, typically learned through a range of perspective built through influence. That can manifest as creativity, discovery, omission, concealment, and destruction. A physical perceptive lens through learned behaviors found within the natural and societal laws of one's reality. Incentivized by economics and cultural norms. An intellectual perceptive lens, typically learned through language, allocated through various methods of communication and functional and applicable interpretation. Resulting in a range towards evolution and/or regression. The allocation of knowledge could be a combination of two or all three of the different type of environmental and social perceptive lenses. The most efficient and impactful way a person views and absorbs knowledge. This could be an emotional perceptive lens, typically learned through a range of perspective built through influence that can manifest as creativity, discovery, omission, concealment, and destruction. A physical perceptive lens through learned behaviors found within the natural and societal laws of one's reality, incentivized by economics and cultural norms. An intellectual perceptive lens, typically learned through language, allocated through various methods of communication and functional and applicable interpretation. This is neither positive nor negative. So here's a question. If this chart is accurate, which end of society would you want to live in with the ideas of CESC? With the varying ranges of feminine and masculine energy within us all, and the intellectual category being the turning point for evolution or regression. How would you want the world we live in today to reflect with the ideas of CESC? And finally, will the people representing the energies of both of these sides be able to recognize, appreciate, and understand the opposing side? Because to fully appreciate one position, the polar opposite must exist, or the polar opposite will help you appreciate that. So one cannot exist without the other. So I do believe we can tip the scale in one direction or the other, if we so please. As a whole, I believe this understanding will help during times of reckoning or reconciliation or resolutions. So that is it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed this video on emotional energy. If you have any questions, please leave your comments down below in the comment section. Thank you for watching.